Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and absolutely everybody listening out there. We are Media Voices. I'm Chris Sutcliffe.
I'm Esther Thorpe.
And I'm Peter Houston.
And why are we doing this special episode?
This is a cheeky little preview for our Publisher Podcast and Newsletter Summit, which, if you're listening on the day this goes out, is happening in just over 2 weeks, June the 12th in London at Salsa Temple. It's going to be a great event, and I think we're just going to chat over some of these sessions we're looking forward to, and I guess why we're doing this generally.
But while we're talking, why don't you go to publisherpodcasts.com and do enter MVFriend15 in the promo code on the ticket purchase place, because that will give you 15% off your ticket. And I guarantee you that after listening to this, you will want to buy 1, 2, 3, multiple tickets, maybe bring the entire family, although we do have limited spaces available.
And of course, a ticket gets you access to both the Publisher Podcast and Newsletter Summit. We're running the summit as basically 2 streams within the venue. So you can buy a ticket to one, you can drop into the other, whichever sessions take your fancy.
But that actually raises a really good question. Peter, why are we doing the 2 of them together? What do we think? In fact, you've just published something about this. Why do we think there is significant overlap between what podcasts and newsletters offer to a media business?
Because there's significant overlap between what podcasts and newsletters offer to a media business. I mean, there's all sorts of ways they're the same, but the big one is engagement, right? It's direct to the, I was going to say consumer, which is a horrible word, direct to the reader or the audience or the consumer, whatever word you choose to use. Podcasts are inside people's heads. Newsletters are inside people's inboxes. But there's other stuff, like there's a lot of personality going into podcasts, personalities with the hosts. And I think the same thing is starting to happen with newsletters. Those kind of aggregated feed newsletters that you used to see where it just pulled stuff straight out the CMS. I think they're getting less and less, and it's much more about personality. And I think there's a cost issue. It's not a massive investment to start a podcast. It's not a massive investment to start a newsletter. You can spend loads and loads if you want to get proper serious tech involved, particularly around data collection and data analytics. But to get going with it, I don't think there's the same level of investment as, starting a new website or building an app or whatever.
But there's also a lot of the same issues with actually scaling it around discovery, around the amount of investment required, and actually where you find new audiences.
Well, I was just going to say that's the whole point in having a conference, right?
Yeah.
People are doing some very clever stuff with this. And I think we're lucky that we've managed to get them to share. Actually, it's not luck, is it? Esther worked really hard on it.
Charm and persuasion.
Yeah, people are willing to share their lessons, and I think we found that last year with the podcast summit. We found that through the awards. And I think that's just what's really nice about this community. People are willing to share. There's not maybe the same competitive streak that you get in some other parts of publishing. Yeah.
Well, I think it's in part because so many of those problems are not yet solved. So everyone's kind of looking to share expertise in the hope that eventually we kind of find a path through this.
I think also that it's because they're proven to be quite resilient mediums. You look at what's happening with search, which everybody assumed was going to be around for quite a long time, and some of the predictions for drop-off in traffic there are quite frightening. Social media, let's not get started on what's happened with the platforms, but that idea of building up, I mean, newsletters in particular, where you own that audience, and if your email provider fails, you can take your email list elsewhere. Obviously there's problems with deliverability and challenges like that. And we will be discussing some of those at the summit. Podcasts are a bit trickier, but it's still the idea that if you have people that listen to you week in, week out, you build up that habit. They're a really loyal audience, and they're a lot more resilient to the pressures of the media ecosystem than many, many other things that people have tried.
Well, we've given a bit of a preview about what we're talking about in this mini episode, which is about the sessions that we are all individually looking forward to attending, or in Peter's case, in fact, I think maybe in your case as well, as to hosting. Is that right?
I'm not hosting. I'm going to be sitting on the door,
You're
making
sitting
sure
on the door,
people come in.
Making
Well, in
sure no
Peter's
one
case-
tries to sneak in.
Well, in Peter's case, actually hosting a couple of these sessions as well. So why don't we begin by talking about this podcast stream? Because obviously we are, first and foremost, and well, we used to be, I suppose, a podcast first organization, and we've since become more of a newsletter-led organization. What are we talking about when we're talking about podcasts at this summit? Esther, what are you most looking forward to hearing?
No, I mean, there's loads to look forward to. I could honestly have done a week's worth of conference on this. So there's workshops on making smaller podcasts as part of your revenue mix. There's a really good panel on effectively packaging and selling podcasts. So it's got people like History Hit, Bauer, Reby Media, who I absolutely adore. But actually, the session I'm most looking forward to is Hannah Ajala, who is she's doing a session on marketing and discoverability, and she has got a ton of experience in podcasts and audio for publishers like the BBC, CBC. She's the presenter of Love Janessa, which is an award-winning podcast, and I can't wait to hear her tips and strategies for how publishers can make their podcasts stand out.
What I think is really good about that is the practical side of it, because when we talk about podcasts, a lot of the time we talk about it with this kind of not pie in the sky, but kind of this is what podcasting should be. And yet it takes so much work together, and discovery and everything is a perennial issue. And that was why I was really excited to hear Hannah's speech. Esther, you've taken mine. But on that theme, on the practical side, I'm also really excited to hear how podcasters are going from pod to vod, which is the name of their session. And that's with the head of editorial video at Immediate Media, Paul Doyle. So obviously anybody who's following along with podcasts or has been to any of our awards or the summit last year knows Immediate's doing some fantastic stuff. And it's got some of the best podcasts out there, including, the Radio Times, History Extra, Good Food, you name it, they're kind of involved in that. They've got one foot in every single one of these sectors. And given how much talk there was last year about exploring the video podcast space, I know that both streams effectively that we had, both commercial and kind of editorial, were dominated by, what should we be doing around video podcasting? Because YouTube is such a huge player now. People have almost incidentally made podcast businesses by launching on YouTube. So I think there's going to be so much talk this year about how to do that and do that effectively. So I think it's going to be a cracking opportunity to take in some lessons about how to do that, both from a commercial perspective and how you do it from a practical perspective as well. Although I would like to give an honorable mention to our packaging, selling, and producing high-quality sponsored podcast sessions too, since that is where so much of the money is coming in. Basically, I just want to know all the practical stuff that the three of us can use to take Media Voices to the next level.
I also think
the whole point, right? That's why we do anything.
Yeah.
I also think Paul's session is the only one that mentions AI.
Yeah.
Which actually,
I bet you £100 right now it's not.
No, well, he's the only one that's mentioned AI in his summary, so he's actually going to be looking at how some AI tools can help with video production. But it's been so refreshing to put this together as an agenda and not be sort of worrying about AI all the time. People just want to get down to the nitty gritty.
I'm so interested about that because obviously we record, for anybody who doesn't know, we record remotely. We're spread out all over the country. And yet when I've been thinking about pitching the two of you doing a video podcast, the thing that always stalls me is it might not be particularly interesting. It's, it's by necessity kind of a, 3 screens in one type situation. We all have the same we all have static backgrounds. Nothing is particularly visually interesting. But Premiere Pro, Adobe has just introduced a new tool which very easily determines who is talking, which track is talking, and automatically flips the video to there, where before you'd have to get sort of a proprietary tool for that. And so I think that is what I'm looking forward to from that practical session, is finding out how anybody can do a video podcast and make it visually interesting using widely available tools.
I don't care what he says, we're not doing a video podcast.
I'd need to get my hair cut.
I would need to shave my head a little bit more, yeah. But this is why I've decorated my background with, green screen, guitar there, just so people watching think I'm interesting. Peter, what are you looking for from the podcast session?
So, I mean, these things are a privilege, right? I know some things that I absolutely enjoy above all else about this job is just getting to be on stage with, well, in this instance, 3 of the smartest people in podcasting. I'm speaking with the FT's head of audio, Cheryl Brumley, Stevie Derrick from the Week Junior's Mystery of Science podcast, and Haymarket's head of podcast, former editor of Pod, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Adam Shepherd. And, I've we've got this lessons for award-winning podcast panel, and I just get to sit and ask them questions. It's just, what a privilege. So that one, I'm really looking forward to that. That's, I've done these sessions for a bit now, and I reckon the BBC founder, Lord Rees, I reckon he'd love them. They're informative, they're educational, and best of all, they're entertaining. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I'm also really looking forward to Fernando Pacheco's podcast keynote. If you don't know Fernando, he hosts Monocle's Stack podcast. And he's just brilliant. He's like the nicest man ever, but also, again, really, really smart. And I'm really keen to know how they make their podcast sound as good as they do all the time. It's just amazing.
Me too. Well, I mean, I think that speaks to three of the main things that we want people to take away from this. So Esther has this kind of aspirational aspect to hers, talking about where we can find, new audiences for podcasts, how we can make them stand out, how we can really prove the value of the medium. I'm looking forward to kind of the practical side of it. And Peter, you're also looking to hear from kind of the stars of the podcast producing world. So there's a lot going on even within that agenda. For anybody listening, if they want to find the agenda, Esther, where can they go?
Publisherpodcasts.com. The agenda is on the Summit tab, as are the tickets.
As are the tickets. And don't forget, you can use MVFriend15 to get 15% off your tickets. But obviously, this is not just a podcast-focused event. In fact, it is equally dedicated to newsletters, which have proven over the last year to be one of, to Esther's point earlier, the most resilient ways by which media companies can actually engage with their audiences. So we're doing a separate stream for that. Esther, what sessions are you most looking forward to there?
Oh, again, all of them. Could have done days and days and days worth of programming for this. But I think the one I'm most looking forward to, if I had to pick a favourite session. So I spoke to Myra Bonheim and David Alexander from The Telegraph a couple of podcast episodes back. If you're listening to this in a podcast player, you should just be able to scroll back and see that. One of the things they mentioned was that they'd actually cut and repositioned some of the newsletters in their sort of 38-strong portfolio. And they're running a session at the Newsletter Summit about how to turn around a newsletter that isn't performing. So whether that's diagnosing what's going on to deciding when to rebrand or pivot. And I think that's a question that we don't often ask ourselves is, okay, we're doing all these newsletters. Should we be doing these newsletters? And if they're not working, if they're not meeting KPIs, or if they're not serving you anymore, what can you do? So I'm looking forward to that. That should be really quite hands-on.
See, that's a fascinating one, because kind of the retool is this, so many people kind of either abandon a project if it's not working, or they'll kind of like stick with it until it kind of becomes obvious that it's not. Diagnosing or treating what is wrong with the newsletter is something that I don't really think people talk about enough.
What's that Talking Heads song?
Which one?
We're on a road to nowhere, coming inside.
Well, this has been copyright struck now, obviously, so we cannot put this episode out as is. My recommendation, it's cheating a bit because it is our keynote, but I'm really looking forward to Sean Meads-Williams' opening keynote, and that's entitled "How Does That Make You Feel?" And I don't know about the two of you, but Sean's freelance writing jobs newsletter, it probably has 100% open rate from me, just because of what it is. It provides utility and information because of its listing of upcoming or live freelance opportunities, which is invaluable for freelance sites like me and all the people who receive it on a weekly basis. It's fantastic, but it also has this hugely personality-led appeal. And to go back to what Peter was talking about at the start, Sean's voice is just threaded all the way through the entire newsletter, from the pithy and entertaining ways that she actually describes the roles and the jobs and the opportunities, all the way through to kind of including her own recommendations, what she's watching and reading at the time. So you do get a sense of her personality, and that makes the recommendations that she gives for these freelance opportunities some weight, because you trust the person who's doing it. And that's where all the research is going. People trust individuals now more than they trust brands.
I've got questions about that, though. But I know this episode's not the place.
Right.
But I mean, I get it. It's that whole thing of a parasocial relationship with people and all that idea that they're your friend in the inbox or in the podcast case in your headphones. But there's a relationship there with the brand, right? Because you've got to trust the brand and the individual. Otherwise, if it was just individuals, you were off doing the whole influencer thing.
Yeah, but then again, that research, like endless piece of research, that basically said, yeah, people trust individuals even on social more than they do their, the kind of the news brand. But there is something to be said for having kind of that strong individual voice under the aegis of a news brand, which kind of does also lend legitimacy, provided that people trust that news brand as well. So I'm going to be fascinated to hear what Sean says about this. Peter, I'm looking at the notes, and your recommendation seems to have been written on an empty stomach.
I was emailing one of our sponsors, EchoBox, this morning. I'm just seriously looking forward to their mini cupcakes. To be fair, they're also doing a session on understanding newsletter analytics, so it's not all about the sugar. I don't know if the FTs and the FT strategies guys will have any snacks, but their workshop on monetizing newsletters and revenue models is a must. See, that's a good thing about this summit. Even the sponsors are delivering proper solutions.
Yeah.
Ideas, practical advice. None of your pitchy BS.
Well, I mean, like you said, all the sponsors, but I mean, the FT, if you look at what they've been doing in terms of newsletters, I mean, it's astonishing. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how they consistently maintain this production schedule, but also the quality of what they're actually putting out there. So yeah, that's going to be.
Well, you can ask Sarah Ebener next in a couple of weeks' time.
I think that's a nice thing with this one. Sarah's there, and she's a practitioner, but there's the FT strategies people as well, and they're basically consulting and telling other people how the FT's done what they've done. So, dream team. I mean, to be honest, I couldn't pick one in this because the whole agenda, the whole speaker list is absolutely brilliant. Adam Timmer's going to be there. Chris Finn, old friends. Alice Anderson from Tortoise. Toby Orridine from Back Ballad.
Yeah.
Lucy Cave from Bauer. That was an interesting one for me. I haven't actually seen Lucy speak for ages and ages and ages. S has already mentioned Hannah Jala, who did the Love Janessa True Crime podcast. I don't know. I would say take a bow, Esther. Take a bow, Mrs.
Well, if we're doing video podcasts, you could see, but we're not.
I'll just use AI to generate video of us the entire way through.
The lineup is awesome. I've had people from the lineup telling us the lineup is awesome.
It's always that's always great when you hear people who are speaking. Yeah, when people who are speaking go, "I'm delighted. I'm going to be so excited to hear from."
And I'm going to stay around all day.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's great. That's
not like conferences where the speakers come in for 15 minutes and then piss off. Never. don't want any of that.
Can I also just say, if you are hungry on the subject of food, it's all like Latin American themed. There's like tapas, there's nachos. We are serving nachos. So having done the menus yesterday, there will be no hungry stomachs.
But yeah, Esther, fantastic agenda. Hopefully everybody who's listening has found one or two things that they want to attend, whether that be kind of the aspirational, here's how we grow the industry, the practical, here's how you maintain that engagement with an audience, or even the kind of, I suppose, the hard questions that we don't often like to ask ourselves, which is when do we pivot, when do we try something new, or even when do we finally go, actually we need to find a way to monetize this even better, and how do we do that?
And do you want to know the best part? If you're listening to this and the 12th of June has passed, or you can't get to London, there is a video option. We are videoing everything. We are releasing the videos, the package you can purchase. Yep.
So I will have to get my hair cut.
You will have to get your haircut. So if for whatever reason you can't make it, and we'd obviously love to see you there, but if you can't make it, you can buy a video ticket, and about a month after the summit, when everything's been edited, we will send that to you. I'm sure we will also be releasing some of the sessions, some of the learnings in some form in a podcast special or two, but that'll depend what state we're in after the summit, to be honest.
But you also won't get the benefit of having to, being able to talk to the speakers after the fact.
And there's no cupcakes or tapas.
No cupcakes or tapas, no nachos.
But also, do you know the best bit about the video thing?
Go on.
People who are at the summit could choose a newsletter session over a podcast session that they would really love to go to can now watch both, one live, one on video.
That is good. I thought you were going to say...
How clever is that?
Very good. I thought you were going to say to use as a potential alibi if they're ever sort of implicated in something.
You've been watching way too much Vera.
Well, Esther, why don't you tell people again where they can actually go to get tickets to the summit?
Yeah, okay. I mean, first and most importantly, it's on June the 12th at Salsa Temple in London. That is very soon, so book now. The code MVFriend15, all caps, gets you 15% off, and you can go to publisherpodcasts.com for the agenda, the ticketing page, everything else. Just remember that a ticket gets you access to both streams, so you can either switch across both or bring a colleague. Or there's the video option if you really can't make it or you're listening to this after June the 12th. So really hope to see you there. It'll be my little face on the door. And then Chris is hosting the podcast stage. Charlotte Henry's hosting the newsletter stage. And Peter is doing panels and floating along with Joe Cummings, who is also doing some panels. So
fantastic.
The whole team is going to be there.
Yeah, this is another MV team reunion as well. So if you enjoy the podcast and you don't care about podcasts or newsletters, but you just want to really meet us in the flesh, I'll be signing autographs for a tenner a pop at the gate on the way out. But yeah, no, it'll be fantastic to see you there. It's going to be a great day. I'm really looking forward to it, just selfishly, because I'm going to learn a lot from our speakers. But until then, we will be sending out newsletters, so you can go to voices.media to sign up for that. We're going to be practicing what we preach and learning, putting into practice what we've learned. But until then, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you there, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.